All right, let's tie up a pretty well-known fly here. This is going to be the chubby chernobyl, pretty popular summer dry fly. That's kind of what we're going to end up with here at the end of the day. The foam, the wings, the legs, the dubbing, all that kind of stuff, that can all be interchanged to all kinds of different colors to get any kind of look that you want. The one thing I do want to do, though, is I'm using a Daiichi 1270 size 10 for this. That's really for video purposes. So that is the finished fly. Now, that's fine. That'll certainly work. There's really no problems whatsoever with that. But what I fish mainly are the miniature versions of this. And when I fish those, what I use, even though I'm not a big fan, I use the Firehole 718. Now, the reason why I use that is if you look at this hook, see it's got a much better hook gape on that. When you start to put all the materials and everything on the 1270, this is more of a stimulator hook. It will work. It really not that much of a problem, but I'll tell you, for the Chernobyl, if you're using the 718, you're going to get a little bit more of a hook gape. I think that's going to increase your odds of hooking up if you get a take. That's the hook I would definitely use. So I would use the Firehole 718 in like a size 10 or an 8, for the video. This is a little bit of a better hook, so that's what I'm going to use. So first thing I'm going to do, I've got some A-dot brown veevus here. Pretty standard, just going to get that started. Not going to worry too much about a thread base or anything because of the first material I'm going to tie in. I don't really fully need a thread base, but I'm going to run my thread about 3/4 of the way down. And what I'm going to do is take a tuft of this midge-sized flash, and I'm going to cut off 2 strands. Once I have those 2 strands, I'm going to fold them over. You don't really need to line up the tips, but get them somewhat even just so that you don't lose material. But I'm going to fold it over so I have 4 pieces. And I'm going to tie that in with a couple of wraps. And then I'm going to take the part hanging over the front. I'm going to fold that back, hold it tight, and I'm going to run my wraps all the way down to the bend of the hook where I can cut that off and have it be nice and straight. That's pretty good right there. All right, good. Now, next order of business, you can do your body with a number of different things. I actually kind of like Semperfli's dry fly poly yarn. That's a really good material for this pattern. For this video, I'm going to use ice dubbing though. So I'm going to bring my thread back up all the way to the front of the hook. And it's really just the direction that I want to go in. Usually you dub back to front, but in this situation, I'm going to dub front to back. So we're going to use a little bit of tan ice dub. Pull a little strand out of that. I don't fish this as much as I should. I have a different large dry fly, the double wing golden stone. And that's kind of what I've been using for a large summer dry fly for a number of years. I do use the miniature version of this quite a bit on small streams for little brookies. I'm not sure if it's where I live or the systems that I have around me, but I got to admit, I don't really fish dry flies if I'm targeting larger fish. I honestly think back, I don't think I've ever caught a sizable fish on a dry fly. I just really don't think I have. So I don't really focus on these very much in terms of large fish. I don't know, I'm sure there's places where dry flies are pretty standard for sizable fish. I don't know, it doesn't seem to be the case around here. So I'm going to get that right behind the eye, and you're going to have many opportunities to fill in any gaps or mistakes, so you don't really have to worry too much about how well you're running this down the shank, because we're going to bring it back forward. But obviously you want to make sure that you're not making it so that it's a total mess. I also like to do a little bit of a tighter loop here, or a tighter noodle. There's enough stuff that's going to be tied on here. I don't really want it super bulky. But again, that's the logic of tying the smaller ones. I like fishing the minis. I don't fish the regulars too much. Although I do fish the Delaware a lot in the summer, I'm sure that that'll probably be a good fly to throw. Now, so there's that. What I have is I have a piece of foam pre-cut. Now for the larger ones, I use 3mm foam, and here's a strip of the 3mm foam in brown. For the smaller ones, I use 2mm. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this chunk and I'm going to lay it so that it covers about half of the tail. And I'm going to come in here, I'm going to pinch that down, hold it in one spot nice and firm. Take a couple of loose wraps, tighten it down, and then tighten it down a little bit more with some wraps. Okay, now I'm going to take my scissors. I don't want to block the camera too much, but I'm just going to go make a straight cut here right at the end to square that off. And then of course we're just going to cut up here at an angle. These flies always seem to have these pieces of foam cut, not quite sure why, but it's what we do. So that's kind of what that should look like. Okay, so now we got a couple of things that we have to tie into here. This is another spot where you can use a couple of different materials, a couple of different colors. I like to use this Enrique puglisi trigger point fibers as I get all the other things that are caught in here out of it, but that's kind of what we're looking at in a gray. So I'm going to rip off not an enormous chunk. Remember, this wing's going to be doubled over, so you don't need a massive piece of this stuff. So what I've cut off is a strand about that thick. And all I'm going to do, we're going to comb out the excess. I'm going to run this underneath, and we're going to tie in that chunk with it sticking off the back. Secure that with a couple of wraps. Now I'm going to take the front part, I'm going to fold it back over, leave a little chunk there, and now that it's doubled over, now we'll get that tied in nice and tight, and we're good to go. All right, next order of business, and this is really just a repetitive thing again and again. This is not a difficult fly to tie. It's actually pretty simple, and once you get a couple of them down, you can do them pretty quickly. So I took these medium barred tan and black round legs. I'm going to fold them over, line up the tips like that. That way I can cut them directly in half. So I'm going to take one leg, cinch that in, bring it over the top, and secure that to the side of the hook facing me. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. This is not exactly going to be the most riveting video, not that fly tying videos ever are, but this fly is really just the same basic step again and again. It's pretty straightforward. So there's not really a whole lot of riveting conversation to be had while we're doing this. So once the legs and the wing are in, I want to secure that down a little bit, but I want to tame those legs a little bit and make sure that as I advance my thread towards the front of the hook that I'm not laying down a bunch of bare thread. So all I'm going to do is take my dubbing, I'm going to tie up a thin noodle, I'm going to hold my legs back, we're going to tame those down, fill in that gap with some dubbing, and then we're going to advance our thread forward, not quite to the eye, but we're going to hang back a little bit. Now, you can do this at the end or do it now, but I'm going to use this same material, so I'm going to do it now. I'm just going to take a comb and kind of comb that out a little bit. And I'm going to hold it straight out, give it a snip. Now that I've cut the ends off, now you can really comb it out a little bit better. Tease it towards the back a bit, and you're good. Another thing you can do, you can cut the legs. All right. Had to pause there for a little interruption, so I don't know if what I'm saying now is going to fit with where I cut off, but either way, we've got our thread moved up here a little bit behind the eye. So let's hold our foam solid. A couple of loose wraps, tighten that down, and then get it really cinched in. Okay, like I said before, same procedure, nothing changes. I'm going to take the same exact chunk of fibers that I was using before, and I'm going to go up underneath, get those up under my thread, cinch down on top, a couple of wraps to secure it, double it over. As I said, just same procedure, a couple times in a row. This actually really is a really easy fly to tie. Not very difficult at all. If you're looking for a larger dry and are a beginning tyer, then this is a really good fly to tie. I mean, there's obviously stimulators and stuff, but stimmies are, I'll tell you, stimmies are not a beginner's fly. That's a tough fly to tie. These are pretty simple, straightforward, no hackle. Foam keeps it floating. Very simple. Okay, so same thing. I took some legs, cut those directly in half. I'm going to loop those up underneath, make sure my tips are aligned. I'm going to secure that to the side closest to me. Then I'm going to take the other half of the legs, which I can't find right now. I snipped them in half and I don't know where I put the other piece. Let's see, we'll get the other piece. You don't need your tips perfectly aligned, but it does help to cut them off evenly. It looks a little crooked. There we go. Alright, so those legs are in now. Tighten them down a little bit. And same thing as before. We're going to advance our thread forward, so before we do that, let's coat that in some dubbing here so that we don't have a bunch of bare thread showing. That's really all this noodle is just to cover all that up. Perfect. Okay, so let's take this and cover up the thread. Let's put it in front and back. Make sure it tames those legs a little bit. We'll bring it in front, and once we run out of dubbing, we'll start wrapping right behind the eye. That's where we're going to make our whip finish knot. So fold that back. Perfect. Now we'll take the foam sticking off the front, just right beyond the eye. We'll go straight across, square that off, cut off a couple of angles. Again, probably not completely necessary, but these flies always have that cut made. There. All right, so now we're going to tilt it towards us. Doesn't have to be dead perfect, but let's visualize the length that we want to see these legs at. Go straight across and cut them. That looks good for me. Now we're going to take our wing, cut that off. Might have cut that a little short, but no biggie. We'll comb that all out. And there you have it. That is your chubby Chernobyl. Very easy fly to tie. You're just messing with a little bit of foam, tying some legs and some dubbing. Really not difficult at all. Great fish catcher, simple fly to tie. So, appreciate it. As usual, any comments, questions, anything, leave them right in the comments.